Okay, so this is our form. Now, you can see that with the name and birthday fields, the name of the label is exactly the same as the corresponding property in the customer class. What if here, instead of birth date, I wanted to display date of birth? Well, here we have two options. One is to go in the customer class and apply a data annotation to birth date called display and set its name property to date of birth. Let's compile, back to the browser, refresh. So it's changed. But the problem with this approach is that every time we want to change a label, we have to recompile our code. An alternative approach is to go back to our view, and instead of using this label for, you can manually add a label like this. Now, before saving this, let me show you something. Back to the browser. If I click on the label, the text box below it gets focus. This is because we have an attribute on this label called for. So label for birth date. And birth date you see here is the ID of our input field. Now back to the view. If I remove this label for and use my raw label element, save, back to the browser, refresh. Now this time, if I click this, you see the text box does not get focus. So if you want to get the focus behavior, you need to go back here and manually add for and specify the ID of the input field, which is birth date. Now there is a different problem with this approach. If I change this birth date property in my C# code, it will not be updated here. So you can see we don't have an ideal way to render labels. You either use raw HTML and have to manually specify the name of the target property like here, but this comes with the risk that if you rename these properties in your C# code, you will have to come back here and manually fix them. In contrast, when using HTML.label4, because we are using a lambda expression, if I rename birth date in my C# code, it will get updated here automatically. But the problem with this approach is that if you want to change the label, we have to go back here and apply this data annotation. So I leave it up to you to decide which approach you prefer. But I personally prefer to use this helper method. So let's get rid of this.